Good evening, everybody. My name's Tarali, and this is the Midnight Run. I'd like to welcome you all back to the World of Warcraft Legion beta. Tonight we're going to look at the skills and talents for the Shadow Priest. And I think quite a bit has changed, including like basically the fundamental way a Shadow Priest has been played has kind of changed a little bit. And the rotation's a little different. We got some new spells and a new resource called Insanity, which you build up to unleash like a big combo of spells, do extra damage, that sort of thing. And as long as you can kind of maintain your insanity a little bit, you can continue to reap the benefits of what they call void form. Now, being spec'd as a Shadow Priest, I basically am always in shadow form at this point. It used to be something you had to turn off and on. Now it's just there. I'm always glowing purple like this. Which is pretty cool because it's one less thing to worry about. And they also have removed like all the healing spells pretty much from the kit that a priest would normally have while you're a Shadow Priest. You have a different heal, which I'll get into when we go over the abilities, and you still have Power Word Shield, but you no longer have any of the other heals like Flash Heal or anything like that, because they're making it focus more on DPS rather than being any kind of healer that's worth being a healer for. You still do have the Vampiric Embrace, which helps heal your allies for 40% of the damage for any single target. Shadowed spell ideal, my allies will still heal for that over 15 seconds. That's still there. But let's get into what's actually new. Now, in the Specialization tab, we'll notice right away that you have Void Form, which is a transformation that enables Void Bolt and increases your damage by more, the longer it is active. So the longer you have it active, the better. And starting at the top here, Shadow damage is a DPS spec, of course. Primary status Intellect. Uses Sinister Shadow Magic, especially damage over time spells, to eradicate enemies. Now, we're going to go over, basically, everybody who's played a priest knows what Shadow Word Pain does, and Vampiric Touch, and Mind Flay, and Mind Blast. They all are pretty much the same, except now they generate insanity. So, for instance, Mind Blast generates 14 insanity, Mind Flay is 10 insanity over the duration, Shadow Word Pain is 3 insanity, and Vampiric Touch is 4 insanity. The goal is to get to 100. You have 0 to start with, you build up to 100, and then you hit Void Eruption. Void Eruption, this ability down here on the bottom left, which is basically the only new ability on in the Shadow panel. And it basically, you activate it at 100 insanity, and it releases an explosion, or an explosive blast, of pure void energy, activating void form and causing a bunch of shadow damage to all enemies afflicted by your Shadow Word Pain or Vampiric Touch. So the more things you have that on, the more damage it's going to do. And in addition to that, it transports you into, it activates your void form. And while in void form, this ability changes to a DPS spell called Void Bolt, which does it's a really hard-hitting spell. Now, I do have a talent that I picked, which actually, if you notice the bottom of the tooltip over here, it says requires 70 insanity to activate. I took a talent that reduces it from 100 to 70 to get more use out of the void form and hopefully stay in the void form longer or more often to deal the highest amount of DPS I possibly can. So that's basically why I picked, that's why that's a 70 instead of 100. So now that we've looked at those, not really a whole lot's changed in that regard, but the big changes come in, of course, the insanity like I talked about, and the talent tree. Now, the talent tree for this, I'm not as familiar with priests as I am with like tanking classes such as paladins and warriors. I have played one. My channel partner Rumsy Rum, she plays one a lot, and she only really does the shadow form priest. Currently, she did heal for a little bit, but she didn't like it that much, and we really don't have too much opportunity to do that because we haven't raided in a little while. So once we get back into that, I'm sure she'll go between healing and shadow as needed, but her primary focus is definitely Shadow. Okay, so at level 15, they give you the option of 2 passives and an active. The first passive is Twist of Fate. After damaging a target below 35% health, you deal 20% increased damage and 20% increased healing for 10 seconds. So it seems a little situational because the enemy has to be below 35% in order to activate this, but I could see where if you were attacking a group of enemies and you attacked one that was low, it would boost your damage against the other enemies as well. And being able to increase healing is not really important too much as a Shadow Priest, but it's something. Then we have Fortress of the Mind, which is the one I picked, and it says Mind Flay and Mind Blast deal 10% more damage and generate 20% more insanity. Because you use those 2 spells in your rotation a lot, they basically, anytime you're not casting a spell, you're casting Mind Flay to channel a spell. And when you're hitting Mind Blast pretty much every time it comes up available to you. So those 2 abilities dealing 10% more damage and generating 20% more insanity just seems like a no-brainer. The third one over here is Shadow Word Void, which basically blasts a target's mind for a bunch of shadow damage. And it generates 25 insanity, but it's got a 30-second cooldown, and it's not instant cast. It's 1.13 seconds to cast, which makes it a little bit less useful and a little bit more situational with the 30-second recharge, which implies that it does have multiple charges, but and we can check and see actually how many it has. It starts with 3 charges, so 3 charges and it recharges every 30 seconds. Which means you can cast 1 per 10 seconds and have it kind of always be up, if that was like your optimal rotation. But seeing as it's another buttoned hit and it's not an instant cast, I want to kind of stay away from that and stick with Fortress of the Mind to just get the flat DPS increase. So let's move on to the level 30 talent. Mania is the first one. It's a passive. You move 1% faster for every 5 insanity you have, which means that if you had 100 insanity, you would move 20% faster, which is pretty cool. Having that extra movement speed could make a big difference in mobile fights where you have to move and cast and move and cast. That seems kind of interesting. The second one is Body and Soul, which is a carryover from from what we currently have on the live server. And basically it says Power Word Shield increases your target's movement speed by 40% for 3 seconds. Very useful when you're going to be shielding a lot anyway. Just put that on there, give extra movement speed to a tank or something like that. The last ability in the level 30 tier is Masochism. When you cast Shadow Word Mend on yourself, its damage over time effect heals you instead. Now Shadow Word Mend is a new ability that Shadow Priests get in this expansion. And it's kind of a way to use Shadow as a healing tool because all your other healing tools have been taken away. But it's a little interesting because it says it wraps an ally in shadows which heals for 29,000 but at a price. The ally will take 1,450 damage every 1 second until they have taken 14,500 damage total, 14,500 total damage from all sources or leave combat. So it's very interesting in the sense that I can heal an ally and they'll take damage over time unless they get blasted for more damage, in which case they'll that bleed effect will wear off. But if I heal myself with this talent, then that bleed effect actually heals me. So I'll heal for 29,000 and I'll heal for 1,450 every 1 second until I've healed for another 14,000. That seems very powerful as a self-heal. Now, at level 45, we have Mind Bomb, which it replaces Psychic Scream. It's got 30-yard range, instant cast, it's got a 30-second cooldown. Inflicts the target with a Mind Bomb. After 2 seconds, or if the target dies, it unleashes a psychic explosion, stunning all enemies within 8 yards of the target for 2 seconds. I can see that being very useful in a PvP setting where there's a big mass of enemies, or even in like a raid where you pulled too many things, or you just want to get AoE stuns in. Be a very good way to go. 30-second cooldown, same as Psychic Scream, and they don't flee; they're stunned. So that might be better as far as a crowd control standpoint, in order to keep mobs from just kind of running all over the place and being feared. It's kind of a good alternative. I think there was a glyph that did something similar with Psychic Scream, where they wouldn't flee anymore; they would just stand there and be scared and not do anything. In the middle we have Psychic Voice. Reduces the cooldown of Psychic Scream by 30 seconds, which would basically make Psychic Scream have no cooldown. So that's what I took. I'd have no cooldown for Psychic Scream, which I guess would be really good in PvP, and I guess if you were really trying something crazy, having infinite Psychic Scream would be cool. I don't know if I'll ever really use it too much, but it's definitely interesting that you could make it have no cooldown whatsoever. And the last ability is Dominant Mind. You may also control your own character while Mind Control is active, but Mind Control has a 3-minute cooldown, and it may not be used against players. So it's kind of a give and take here. You can't use it against players, but you can control yourself and the mind controlled target. I don't even want to think about how complicated that would be to do on the fly with only one keyboard and one mouse, and I don't even know what the interfaces looks like, and I don't really even want to try it because I'm scared. That's scary to even think about. But I wouldn't want to. I'd probably never use it even if I did that, because I don't think I've ever cast mind control in a serious way ever. Always been kind of like a joke, or like, let's see what we can do with this, and mind control a guy. At level 60, you're going to get a choice of a Void Lord, which is a passive. Lingering Insanity persists for 8 seconds after you next enter Void form. So when you enter Void form, you get to keep your you get to keep Insanity longer, which is very good because you can keep your it makes it so you can cast more Void Bolts. You might get 1 extra in there, maybe 2 extra in there if you have a good rotation and enough haste. And so that's a good way to get extra damage. And then in the second slot we have Reaper of Souls, and this basically says that Shadow Word Death is now castable on targets below 35% health, and always generates Insanity as though it killed the target. So with Shadow Word Death, which I need to actually look in the spellbook for because I left it off of here. With Shadow Word Death, it's a word of dark binding that inflicts a bunch of shadow damage to the target, only usable in enemies that have less than 20% health. Well, now they bumped up to 35% if you take Reaper of Souls, and it generates more insanity. Oh, the same amount of insanity if the target's not killed. So it generates 10 insanity, or 30 if the target dies. But now with that talent, it'll always give you 30, which is really good. Does a lot of damage. It's instant cast. Might be really a worthy option for DPS, especially with a 9-second recharge, which means it's probably got 2 or 3 charges, something like that. We could look. We'll look and see. It's got. Makes it have 2 charges, so you can use it twice, and it's got a 9-second recharge, so 1 every 45 seconds or 4.5 seconds, and you're generating 30 insanity in that time. That's really good. And I had chosen Void Ray, which is the last one in the level 60 tier. Each time your Mind Flay or Mind Seer deals damage, you gain 10% increased. You gain 10% increased Mind Flay and Mind Seer damage for 6 seconds, and it stacks up to 5 times. So it's kind of like I took that stacking buff of, if I'm going to be casting Mind Flay over and over again as it is, I might as well do that. But I think I'm going to change my mind to Reaper of Souls, so I can have the 2 charges of Shadow Word Death to get me extra damage and faster insanity regeneration for more Void form. So, changing things as we go, but that's the nature of the game. Alright, at level 75, we get this ability that's going to be impossible for me to pronounce correctly. Sanlayn? I don't know, something like that. SAN''LAYN. Who knows? Somebody tell me. Whatever. It increases the damage of your Vampiric Touch by 20% and the healing of your Vampiric Embrace by 20%. So Vampiric Touch is always going to be up because you want that healing, so having it at 20% increased damage is very good. Vampiric Embrace you're definitely going to cast when you're in a party, or even if you need even more healing. So it's definitely just a good increase across the board about the damage you deal and the healing that comes along with that as well. And in the middle, we have Auspicious Spirits. Your shadowy aspirations now deal 100% increased damage and generate 4 insanity. That's basically double damage for your aspirants and 4 insanity. Very good. It's insanity you don't even have to do anything to get other than just be you. So I kind of like that in the sense that it's got a lot of different levels that it can work on. But I ended up ultimately changing to taking Shadowy Insight. Shadow Word Pain's periodic damage has a 10% chance to reset the remaining cooldown of Mind Blast and cause your next Mind Blast to be instant. So it's a good way to just get a free Mind Blast in there, and 10% is a pretty hefty chance considering you're probably going to have Shadow Word Pain on more than one target if there's a group, and you're always going to have it up on one target. So the chance is going to increase kind of exponentially the more targets you have this on. So you can get a lot of free Mind Blasts in there, which is really good because Mind Blast has a lot of other synergies that we've already talked about, including Mind Flay, the top talent up here, level 15, which gives Mind Blast and Mind Flay 10% more damage and 20% more insanity. That all works together to create like a nice rolling insanity generator to create, a good amount of damage that you deliver to the target on a consistent basis. Now, let's move down to the level 90 row. We have Power Infusion. It's basically going to work the same way that it did before. It just generates insanity as well, or increases your insanity generation by a percentage, 25% as well. So that's, just makes it work with the theme of insanity while still being as good as it was before, which is very good. In the middle we have Shadow Crash, where you hurl a bolt of slow-moving shadow energy at the destination, dealing 32,000 damage to all targets within 8 yards. It's basically your AoE attack if you want it. I didn't end up taking it because it's still got a 30-second cooldown and it only generates 15 insanity, so didn't really think I needed it too much. Could change my mind because it depends on how much AoE we're actually going to be doing. Having been out in the world, AoE is not really something you want to get too much into when you're by yourself. If you're a tank, you can make it pretty easily, but a DPS class kind of like soloing out there, probably not a good idea to grab a group of things and try to burn them all down unless you're, really, really geared, because everything's going to be around your level now. It's not like you're going to go into a zone where everything's 10 levels lower than you. It's all going to be around your level, so you got to be able to manage taking on mobs that come at you. So if you try to take a big group and you don't have enough healing or enough armor or health, or basically enough DPS to take them down before they get you, then you're going to end up in a bad way. So I didn't really want to take that, mostly for that reason. The last one, of course, is Mindbender, which replaces the Shadow Fiend, which I thought was kind of an interesting thing. Summons a Mindbender to attack the target for 15 seconds. The main reason I took this was because the Shadow Fiend has a 2-minute cooldown, and the Mindbender has a 1-minute cooldown, which means I'm going to be using it a lot more often, which I like. The Shadow Fiend's 2-minute cooldown's in the middle of being hit it every time it's up and save it for a good fight. With a 1-minute cooldown, you can pretty much hit it every time it's up, and you're not gonna feel bad about doing it. You're not gonna be hesitant because the cooldown's so long, and you're gonna feel okay about it if you waste it too, because it's only a minute cooldown. Finally, we get down to level 100. I took the Legacy of the Void passive. Void form may be activated anytime your insanity level is 70 or higher. Now, I mentioned this earlier when we were actually looking at Void Eruption, which normally requires you to be at level, or have insanity of 100 to activate. But this talent drops it down to 30, or drops it down by 30 to 70, which means that I'm going to get it off more fast. I'm going to get it to that point faster. I'm going to be able to stay in it longer, hopefully do more damage. Mind Spike is the middle one, replaces Mind Flay. Assault the target with shadowy spikes, dealing Shadow Frost damage and leaving a spike embedded in their mind. Mind Blast will detonate these spikes, each dealing 200% of their original damage to the main target and 100% to all nearby targets. It's just kind of another way to make Mind... it's kind of like another Mind Seer. I'm going to put a Mind Spike in there, and then my Mind Blast will, you know, make that spike do AoE damage instead of my Mind Seer doing AoE damage. So it's kind of like I'll have Mind Seer to do AoE damage, and I'll have this to do AoE damage. But like I said, AoE I don't think is really going to be a big deal out in the world, which is level 100. You're going to be out in the world more than you're anywhere else. So I left off with the AoE and stayed with just single target focus. The last one we have here is Surrender to Madness. It's instant. It's got 10-minute cooldown, which is really big. All your insanity generating abilities generate 200% more insanity, and you can cast while moving until you exit void form. Then you die horribly. Wow, that's insane. That makes me want to take it just to show you what happens when I hit it, which I think we'll do. I didn't read the last part of that until just now. But I have to take it now to know exactly what that means. So those are basically all your abilities and the talents that you need, or that, you know, just to preview what you're going to get at level 100 to go out into the world and quest during Legion, the opening, especially when the pre-patch hits, because this will probably all be available pre-patch, so you'll be able to play this before even Legion comes out. So it's good to be prepared. It's good to have an idea of what you're looking at when you see this and you see the changes and stuff. That's kind of why I do these videos, because I know a lot of people don't necessarily read all the patch notes, and they don't follow along with all the changes to every kind of class and character that they play. So these videos are just a little guide to show you what you can expect when you come out here, you know, when the pre-patch hits and all your talents have changed and you need help picking out what you want to do. I hope you guys, you know, tune into my videos and you know, take note of what I say, and hopefully it helps you guys make decisions and helps you play how you want to play. Alright, so now we come to the portion of the video that we always like, and that's the rotational part of the video. Hopefully with an added benefit of Surrender of Madness doing something unexpected. So basically, it's the same rotation that Shadow Priests have kind of maintained, with a little bit of flavor kicked in here and there. You're always going to do the Vampiric Touch and the Shadow Word Pain. Then you're going to, Mind Blast, and while that's on cooldown, you're going to Mind Flay. And you're going to do it again. And then I got an instant Mind Blast, so we'll hit that. We want to make sure that our Shadow Word Pain stays up, and that our Vampiric Touch stays up, as we generate our way towards 100 Insanity. And when we get to 100 Insanity, we activate Void Eruption, which does that. Hits a bunch of targets and increases my damage, which turns it into Void Bolt, which we hit to do the maximum amount of damage we can. And if you noticed up in the top left-hand corner, my insanity bar slowly drains away when I'm in void form, which is how it's intended. It reminds me of how Balance Druids used to be, which they probably still are. I haven't looked at them, but where you balance between one side and the other. You cast, nature spells to increase your arcane, to move you towards one side or the other, and then when you get to that side, it changes your spells and you do more damage. It reminds me, it's very like that, except just one-sided. You're just building up to that. See, right now we're hitting it now. We're in void form, and you'll see up at the top that my my insanity is reducing itself. And when that's over, I'm going to hit this ability, Surrender to Madness, and we're going to see what happens. Alright, hitting Surrender to Madness. Okay, it's a big buff. I'm going to do a lot of damage here. I'm entering void form, and we'll see what happens when void form ends. It does say that I'm going to die horribly, so we'll see what happens. I didn't know that they would put something like that in the game. We'll see if they're just being facetious or if that's actually something they want to do. I am staying in void form for a really long time, which may be why this could be the more popular option, because you hit this in a boss fight, and then if you're good enough, you just stay in void form the whole time, and then presumably you'll never suffer the fate of the madness. But here we go. Yep. That's exactly what it said it was going to do. It killed me. As soon as the buff ended, or as soon as I left shadow form, it killed me. I do have a 3-minute debuff right here. It says, surrendered soul. I cannot be revived by in-combat resurrections for 2 minutes? Probably 3 minutes, I would have to say. Is what it looked like it started at. So not only does it give me a boost to my damage and eventually kill me, it prevents me from being rezzed by a battle res or a soul stone or whatever the Death Knight one is called. I can never remember. It's like reanimate dead or something like that. It prevents that. So you can't just hit this at the beginning of a long fight and then die and then have somebody bring you back and do it again unless the fight lasts for like 6 minutes. In which case, I guess you found a way to game the system or whatever, but I don't think you being dead for 3 minutes of a fight is going to be a way to successfully make a mark on the DPS charts, so to speak. I doubt the contribution of that one spell will make up for the time that you are not DPSing at all. But that was interesting nonetheless. I'm still levitating, I guess, even though I'm dead. That's it for this video, and I hope you guys liked it. Make sure you hit the like button if you did, and subscribe for more content in the future. We're going to have tons of Legion content as it gets closer to launch, and after launch we're going to still have Legion content going on, so make sure you guys subscribe to let me know if you guys really want to see this stuff, and comment on the videos. Let me know what you guys think of the new priest changes for Shadow Priest, and as well as the other videos I have up with the tanking warrior and the paladin and the survival hunter. All those are really great as well, and I really would like your feedback, and I want to keep making these for you. I want to make them as the best I can for everybody. So if there's something you want to see more of, just let me know in the comments, and then I'll make that happen. Alright, well, this has been the Legion Beta with the Shadow Priest, who is now dead. I, of course, have been your host, Raleigh, and until next time, catch you on the next Midnight Run.